This is Patterns of the Moon Scratch program. Before we get started on the actual coding, let's orient ourselves to the landing page. On the left-hand side, you can see the stage along with the green flag, which starts the program, and along with a stop sign, which stops the program. On the right-hand side, you'll see the instructions. Let's run through the instructions to guide us on what we need to do. 1. Click on the green flag to start the program. And then it says, note, this Scratch program was designed to show the phases of the moon for June 2023. 2, click See Inside and check out the code. 3, can you change the code to show the phases of the moon for a different month? So that is the challenge for your students to be able to modify the code to a different month. So let's run through the program just to see what it looks like. So when we click the green flag, we see Gobo, who has a little bit of text talking about how beautiful the moon is, and then he gives us, it gives us some instructions as to what needs to happen next. And that next step is by pressing the space bar to see more. So once we click on the space bar, we see that there's a brand new image of the actual moon here. And if you see right below it, it is a slider. And if we were to change the dates, so again, this is based on June 2023, we see the different phases changing. So again, going backwards, forwards, we can look at how the moon is changing. So it looks like June 17th, we had a new moon, and then it changed again on the 22nd. So this is just showing you how the moon was changing and the different phases based on each date for June 2023. Now, let's click See Inside to look at the code. This is what it looks like when we click See Inside. So before we make any changes to the code, I want to invite you all to actually join Scratch or to sign in if you have an account. It's relatively easy, nothing super crazy. You just need an email. So go ahead and join Scratch if you don't have an account. I have an account, so I'm going to click sign in. This is my personal, so that's my username and password. When I click sign in, I see this beautiful green button in the middle that says Remix. And when I click Remix, it allows me to make a copy of the program, and any sort of changes that actually happens, I'm able to do that. So I'm going to actually modify this and say Miss Tovar, because I'm actually going to use this with my classroom, so my students will know that this is the program that I want them to use. So now that I've done that, right, I've changed it, I've saved it, I can now start modifying. So in order for me to have a little bit more space in the coding area, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the right-hand side, and I'm going to click on the very first square, which you'll see that the stage is going to end up becoming smaller. So I'm going to click that, and that right-hand side ended up becoming a little bit smaller, and I have more space to code now. Now I want to orient you to the bottom down here, and these are called sprites. So these are the images that we can actually code, and that's what you're able to see when you're playing the program or starting the program. So this is all of the text that Gobo was saying. Now I'm going to say hypothetically, I'm going to change this to actually be for August 2023. So as you can see, I was just able to click. I can modify this, and I'm going to write August because I'm going to actually change this to August. So now text is the same, but at least that has been updated. Where most of your changes in code will happen will actually be on the second sprite, on the moon phase sprite. So if you go here, you'll see that the code is a little bit more complex. And if you see here, it is highlighted because I never stopped the program when I initiated. So I'm going to click stop, and you'll realize that the highlighting has now stopped. So we're just going to go through a small section to talk through sort of what is happening with the code. So here it says when the spacebar key is pressed, the image, so again, the images of the moon is going to go to the coordinates of 248. So again, Scratch is really great because it works off of coordinates, so it takes that image to that. And then it says show. So if you remember from the beginning when we started the program, we saw Gobo and a beautiful image of trees and a full moon. We didn't actually just see the images of the different phases of the moon. So now they've been able to show after the space key has been pressed. Also, we're able to see this variable, this slider, which is right here. It wasn't there in the beginning, right? It was hiding, so now it's able to show, and it's setting the date of the month to 1 because, again, months start at 1, so we want to make sure that that's where it starts. If we look at this forever loop, it allows for us to be able to move the slider back and forth and for us to see the different phases over and over again. There isn't just, it's only going to happen once. That's what this forever loop is able to do. Now, moving down to our first conditional statement is if the date of the month equals to 1, then it's going to switch the costume to a waxing gibbous. Now, if I'm modifying this to August 2023, then August 1st of 2023 was actually a full moon. So I'm going to modify this and I'm going to put full moon because that was the actual phase of August 1st. And now, obviously, it's going to be changing. So that change happens on August 3rd. So in order to be inclusive of August 3rd, when the waning gibbous happens, it's going to be greater than 2, which includes number 3, and it's going to go all the way until the 6th. So this is going to be less than 7, so that it includes the number 6. Then we're going to switch the costume to a waning gibbous. So now it's actually, losing some of the light. It's getting smaller. That's what waning means. It's just getting smaller. So we've just done those first 2 sections. What I recommend is for your students or yourself to start looking at these patterns, right? Is there something that you notice? Going back to your unplugged activity, can you use that to modify and to edit the code? If you look at each conditional statement, they're all very, very similar, right? What's being modified are actually the dates along with the costumes. So that pattern repeats all the way down, and your algorithm, right, will be changing based on the date and the month that you've chosen. Something that I want to point out now are 3 major programming concepts that we want to focus on. The first one being conditionals. So, again, this if then concept is a conditional statement. So, again, if the date of the month is greater than 2 and the date of the month is less than 7, then it's going to switch the costume to a waning gibbous. This is important because, again, it is greater than 2 because we want to include 3 and we want to include 6. So that's why it's less than 7. So we want to make sure that when we're writing this, it is inclusive of the dates that need to be there. Another thing to keep in mind are operators, and that's these lovely green blocks that have the greater than and have the word and. These are logical and mathematical operators. These are extremely important for logic because, again, it allows us to make these decisions and to actually code so that it displays the dates. And if you see, it's an and, not an or, because that would change how the program shows up. So that is an important concept to think about. And then finally, loops. In here, we only have one loop, which is this forever loop. However, you can always change it so that it only goes through a number of times, which is more of your traditional loop. Now, we're just going to be testing a section of the code, which is really, really important just to make sure that it is working the way it's supposed to. So the way you do that, it's by clicking a section. So in this case, I'm going to click this yellow top hat. And if you see, now we're going to go back to this yellow highlighting right here. And it's only testing this section. So again, if we're at date of the month is 1, oh, look at that. We actually see a full moon. Now let's see if on day 3 that actually changes. So 1, that stays the same. Oh, and 3, it changes. So 2, 1, 2, as you can see, it is still a full moon. But once we change it to 3, it now changes to a waning gibbous. So we know that our program is actually working. Once we are completed, we want to make sure that we want to test the full program. So the way you do that is by expanding it to full screen, and then you can stop it and replay from the beginning. So once again, we see Gobo. For time purposes, I'm just going to click the space bar and then we can go through. Again, if you realize I only changed the first two phases, so then everything else, it's still for June 2023.